So thanks everybody coming tonight. This is TK Kugler. I am founder of both Wasabi Ventures Stables and Wasabi Ventures Stallions. And tonight we're going to talk mostly about Wasabi Ventures Stallions and specifically our first stallion that we're standing, Force the Pass. We'll be standing him in Maryland at Anchor and Hope. And you know, it's interesting when you delve into the stallion part of the business, of the racing business, the things that you that you see from a different perspective, and you get to look at the business in a completely different way. And we're kind of excited that we get to do that. We're also really excited about this particular stallion and standing this particular stallion in Maryland. George Adams, our director of breeding and stallions, is going to talk a little bit later, and he's going to spend most of his time talking about the horse specifically. I wanted to take just a couple minutes and talk about sort of our vision and what we're planning to do over at Wasabi Ventures Stallions. Like many things, we've tried to come up with creative ways to get people involved in all aspects of ownership of the racing world. We've had broodmare programs over at Stables where there are very few broodmare programs, and we do those programs with no markup and very reasonable approaches. We have yearlings, we've done 2-year-olds, we've done the claiming game. We really are trying to be an end-to-end solution to allow the expansion of racing, and specifically the expansion of ownership of racing to people that wouldn't necessarily ever had the chance. And we've done the same thing with stallions. We have 24 people that have purchased a 1% or more slice of Force the Pass. It's great to have the quote from some of these people where they would say things like, "I never thought I would have a chance to be a stallion owner." And we've created a program that lets them do that, and gives them the chance to get real upside if this works. So that's really what our goal and our focus is at Wasabi Venture Stallions. Our plan is to stand multiple stallions over the next handful of years. We have some fairly big dreams, and I was actually talking to George about some of those today. We're lucky to have people like George who have joined our team, and I've worked with George for a handful of years now, and to be able to lucky enough to bring him on board full time has been great. But that's enough from me. I'm just going to go. I have a video. This is on the Force the Pass website, but you can find it on YouTube. I'm going to play this video for you. This is Force the Pass winning the Belmont Derby in 2015. And when you watch this video, and I've got it fast forwarded to sort of the top of the backstretch, if you watch the video and you listen to the call, you'll understand very quickly what we liked about this stallion and why we were lucky enough to add him. So here he goes.
And runs into the far turn in front. The rails open for Force the Pass. And Force the Pass and Joel Rosario come on through. And they take the lead from Polo on the far turn. Randy's is third to the outside. Extreme outside, Startup Nation is next. It's a wide run for DeBeasy Barrow. He's got Force the Pass to catch as they turn for home. Force the Pass coming into the final for a long putt. Rundall is 2 lengths behind in second, and then it's Manny Sitton. And then comes Startup Nation, not safe for DeBeasy Barrow. It is Force the Pass. Oh, he is running away from the field. Force the Pass in the Belmont Derby.
So hopefully that gave you a little bit of the feel of what we love about him. Just to flip over, here's a confirmation picture of him up at St. Omer's Farm, where he is presently sitting. And he's just a big, beautiful creature. And like I said, we're lucky enough to have him. So with all that said, I'm going to flip this over to George and let George do the rest of the talking. One couple of quick logistical things. If you have any questions, you can use the chat functionality inside of Zoom, and I'm more than happy to field those, and I'll ask those along the way if I can be useful. But so feel free to ask those questions at any point. But without any further ado, I'm going to flip it over to George Adams. George, you on?
All right, thanks, TK. Yeah, so that replay highlighted a couple of things about Force the Pass that made him really interesting to us. First of all, he's a grade 1 winner. There's only 4 of those at stud in Maryland now. He won that race. That was only his 6th lifetime start, and he had won a grade 3 going a mile in his race before that. He defeated a top class field in that grade 1. It was $1 million race. He's a millionaire on earnings. He came home his final half mile in that race in 45 seconds and change, and his final quarter mile in just over 22 seconds, which is pretty impressive time, at the beginning of a race, never mind at the end of a 10 furlong race. You can see in that confirmation photo, he's a big, beautiful, well-made horse. He's correct. He's got lots of bone, lots of substance. He's very well balanced. He's got a little more stretch to him than some of the sons of Speightstown. And by the way, Speightstown has 108 stakes winners to his credit and is a rising sire of sires with stallion sons out there like Munnings. Central Banker was the leading freshman sire in New York last year. Firenze Fire is a grade 1 winner, 2 from the first crop of a son of Speightstown. Speightster and Tamarcuz are 2 young sons of Speightstown who had their first yearlings, sold very well this year at the Keeneland September sale. And this horse has the qualifications to match any of them on race record and physical. He's out of a multiple grade 3 winning Dynaformer mare, who is closely related to the $4.6 million earner Perfect Drift. Force the Pass, grade 1 winner at 3. He was a stakes class at 4, stakes winner at 6, and he was grade 2 placed this year as a 7-year-old. So he was durable, he was consistent, and just really, really top class. He's by Speightstown, who traces to Mr. Prospector, but he's out of a Dynaformer mare, which opens him up to be bred to a lot of the types of mares that have worked for Speightstown himself and his son so far, of which the El Prado line is a big one. Danzig Danzig line mares, we think will suit him well. Yeah, he's as qualified as any stallion at stud in not just Maryland, but I mean, he's got the qualifications to be in Kentucky if things had broken right for him. We're glad that they didn't. And we're excited about him. We've had a great response from breeders so far. A couple of the top breeders in Maryland are on board with the lifetime breeding right program that we're doing with him. We have other breeders that are kicking around that idea, and other folks that have committed mares already. We have people out of Kentucky, breeders out of Kentucky, who are signing up for the lifetime breeding right program. So it's a very easy to be excited about this horse, and yeah, we can't wait to get him rolling in the breeding shed in the spring.
George, you mentioned the lifetime breeding right program that we're doing. Could you spend a minute and explain what that is?
Absolutely. So the horse is going to stand for his live full stud fee is $4,000 advertised. And for $6,000, we're offering lifetime breeding rights, which is sort of our version of the Share the Upside program that Spendthrift pioneered a few years ago. Into Mischief is sort of their poster child for that. For Force the Pass, the way it works is you pay the $6,000 this year, $3,000 with the contract, and the balance of $3,000 is due by the end of the year. And with that, you can basically breed as many mares as you want to the horse his first 4 years at stud. And then from his 5th year on, you have 1 breeding a year. So no matter how high his stud fee rises. So like into mischief, the folks who bought those lifetime breeding rights at $15,000 or whatever it was now can sell their breeding right every year for, they just announced that Into Mischief is going to stand for $175,000 next year. I say basically unlimited mares his first 4 years. The only limitation on that will obviously be the sort of demand at the breeding shed. We don't envision it being a problem, but if one lifetime breeding right purchaser has already bred 3 or 4 mares to the horse and somebody else has only bred 1 or none yet, and they both want the same time slot, we would give preference to the breeder who has not yet bred to the horse. But otherwise, we envision allowing people to breed as many mares as they would like for those first four years. The only catch, to the extent that there is a catch, is we are requiring breeders to breed at least 1 mare a year to the horse his first 3 years in order to keep the lifetime breeding right. And that's just the way that, those second and third books are not quite as important as the first book, but it's still important to get mares to the horse in those second and third years. And we think for the value that we're offering with those lifetime breeding rights, it's not a big ask to require folks to breed a mare for 3 years. It doesn't have to be the same mare. It can be different mares those 3 years. They just have to breed a mare.
George, another question that, for something that you mentioned is, what type of mares are you, I know we have tested, literally hundreds, actually thousands of mares on crosses with him. Which ones do you find the most interesting for possibilities with Force the Pass? Which types of crosses are you most interested to see how they turn out?
Sure. Kitten's Joy mares are at the top of my list. Speightstown and his sons have had a lot of success with mares by El Prado line stallions, so Medaglia d'Oro. Not Kitten's Joy yet, but a very small sample size. Munnings has a stakes winner out of a Perfect Soul mare. There's a Speightstown line stakes winner out of a Borrego mare. Kitten's Joy, out of those I picked because Kitten's Joy, one of the patterns that the Ramseys have used when they were selecting mares to breed to the horse early on, they wanted mares that would produce inbreeding to Roberto when mated with Kitten's Joy. And that's something I think we should highlight with Force the Pass also, given that he's out of a Dynaformer mare. So we have that same opportunity to create the inbreeding to Roberto, with mares by Kitten's Joy. Medaglia d'Oro mares are going to fit him. Artie Schiller mares is another El Prado line horse. Another sire line I think is going to work. Include has had great results with Speightstown so far from a very small sample size. There's lots of Include mares in the Mid-Atlantic. I think Broad Brush and Concern mares will suit him just as well. And that's a variation on that inbreeding to Roberto theme. Broad Brush and Include are not they're not Roberto line horses, but they are both inbred to Turn To, who is the sire of Roberto. So you're adding more of that blood that clearly likes to have multiple strains in a foal. It's been a very successful pattern. So I would love to get more Include mares than just the one that we have targeted so far. And Danzig has been the other big cross for Speightstown and his sons. Danzig line mares. Wagelia up in Pennsylvania, very underrated stallion, gets nothing but runners. I'd love to get some of those hard knocking Wagelia mares to Force the Pass. Outflanker has been in Maryland forever. Outflanker mares should suit this horse very well. Honestly, there's not a lot that shouldn't work with him. Speightstown and Speightstown's a son of Gone West. Other Gone West line horses have had lots of success crossing back over More other Mr. Prospector lines. Not for Love has worked very well as a broodmare sire with Gone Westline Stallions in Maryland. Those types of mares should suit Force the Pass very well.
Great. Another sort of question is, we showed the video of him winning the Belmont Derby, which is obviously a turf race. Talk to me a little bit about how you think, is he a turfy stallion? Where do you see him falling on sort of the turf, dirt, synthetic sort of options?
Sure. I mean, first of all, turf isn't the dirty word that it used to be. Sid Fernando's touched on it a couple of times, this year in his columns for the TDN. The number of turf races continues to grow. The number of turf stakes races continues to grow in this country. And the rest of the world runs almost exclusively on turf. So I don't think that turf is going to be the hindrance for a stallion. Having a turf preference isn't going to be the hindrance that it would have been years ago. And in Maryland, it already isn't. I mean, Seville, who stood here for a couple of years, was a son of Galileo. He's no longer around, but he was the most popular stallion in Maryland for a year or two at the beginning of his career. So breeders here are savvy enough to realize, they've got a really nice turf course at Laurel. They run a lot of races over that turf course at Laurel. Delaware has a nice turf course. Monmouth, they run that little meet at the Meadowlands. Colonial. I mean, there are turf courses at all of these tracks, and it's not a bad thing to have a turf horse, because those are the races that draw big fields and that the tracks want to run. Having said that, obviously Force the Pass did all of his running on the turf. He was a very good turf horse. They never tried him on dirt because they sort of tried him on turf and he was good. So there was no incentive for them to try him on the dirt. Speightstown gets all kinds of horses. He gets dirt horses, he gets turf horses, he gets sprinters, he gets routers. This horse, he won his big race at 1.25 miles. He was also a grade 3 winner at a mile. And if you look, his connections seem to think of him more as a miler type of horse, based on the races they targeted and ran him in during his career. Speightstown, very versatile. Dynaformer, this horse's broodmare sire, very versatile. He started early on. People thought of him as a turf horse, turf sire, but he got Barbaro, who won the Derby. This horse is out of a mare who's very closely related to Perfect Drift, who was a grade 1 winner on the dirt. There's no reason that this horse couldn't have been good on the dirt if they had tried him, and there's no reason to think that he's not going to get dirt runners as well. He's built like a dirt horse. He's a big, strong, muscular. He looks like Speightstown, only with a little more stretch to him. But a very powerful horse. He's not a sort of stretchy, racy turf router type. I think he'll, especially if bred to dirt mares, he'll have no problem getting dirt horses.
Thanks. We got one question from the audience. The question was really specific around, and the question came from Mark. Once again, everyone, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat functionality and ask them, and I'll sort of act like Oprah here and ask them. But Mark asked a question: what are our plans for Wasabi Ventures stables mares? Will all of them be bred to Force the Pass this coming year? If so, and if not, how do we select which ones are and which ones aren't? I'll take a crack at it at an answer, and George, you're free to chime in if I miss anything. We have a really growing band of broodmares. I think we have 21 or 22 right now, with 3 or 4 more on the way. So we have quite a few broodmares now ourselves. Many of them will be targeted to Force the Pass this coming year. But there are a few. We were actually talking about a couple today that we're actually going to be sending to Kentucky Stallions. There are business reasons to send these particular mares to Kentucky Stallions. We also have a broodmare band in New York, small, and at least one of them will be bred to Reedsdale for sure, because we have a lifetime breeding right there that we're supporting, that we purchased. So we'll do that. It's also possible that if we pick up another New York or mare or two this year, that they do not, they may or may not be bred to force the pass. Really what we're doing in almost all cases from a business perspective is making the right decision for the mare. And if that happens to be a force the pass cross, that's great. I will tell you that there are great business reasons to breed to force the pass as well. Even though I'm wearing two hats, both as Wasabi Ventures Stables and Wasabi Ventures Stallions. Wasabi Ventures Stables bought a lifetime breeding right. So we are able to breed as many Wasabi Ventures Stables mares for that $6,000 price. So it does create an opportunity for quite a bit of cost savings for those people who are on those mares. So did I miss anything, George?
No, there's some of the mares pedigrees. We have an elusive quality mare in the broodmare band. If we bred her to force the pass, it would be 3x3 inbreeding to Gone West, which is actually a grade 3 winner, bred that way, but it's not something that we're sort of dying to try or to force to happen. There's a couple other, nicks aren't the be all end all, but they are instructive sometimes. So there's a couple mares that we're going to breed to the horse that don't have great nick ratings right now on the face of it. There's other reasons that we like those mares for force the pass beyond the nick. But there's some mares that the nick isn't great, and there's not a lot of other reasons on the page to think that they're going to work with force the pass. And those mares, we're not going to force them to force the pass. There's some other stallions in the Mid-Atlantic that we like, that we will use for them. A couple of mares will go to Kentucky, like you said, for various reasons. A couple of mares in New York, and Reedsdale is another son of Speightstown, which is just sort of a coincidence. But mares that might fit force the pass would also fit Reedsdale. At least a mare that could go to force the pass will go to Reedsdale also, because he's another stallion that we believe in. We're trying to support to a lesser degree.
Yep.
But an important thing to remember, especially with nick ratings, we're trying to make this stallion, just because nick ratings look to the past. And for a new stallion like this, all of those nick ratings, they have nothing to do with this horse. They're based on his sire and other sons of his sire. It doesn't mean that he's going to have the same results. He has a totally different bottom line than most of the other Speightstown sons out there, than all of the other Speightstown sons out there. That's half of his genetic makeup is not the same, and not factored into those nick ratings. So it's important that, nick ratings notwithstanding, we give the horse an opportunity with as broad a group of mares as possible, broadly pedigreed group of mares as possible, to find out what might work different for him than what's worked for Speightstown and the other sons of Speightstown that are out there.
Hopefully that answered your question, Mark. If it didn't, feel free to chat back. Another sort of question I got today, not from anyone that's but talking about stallions. This is a question I'm gonna pose to you, George. How did we determine that we wanted this particular stallion? Talk a little bit about the process we went through internally and how we ended up on Force the Pass.
Sure. We had been looking for several months. We'd had some ideas about types of horses we thought would work here, certain sire lines, certain racing proclivities. We were actually targeting turf runners, but not necessarily because they were turf, more because they had sort of worked here before. And this horse was pointed out he was running at Laurel. He ran at Laurel in, I think it was July. And he's 7 years old. He was a grade 1 winner and still running. So he clearly, for whatever reason, had missed the chance to go to Kentucky. I think, it was a timing issue more than anything. And he has, we sort of highlighted his qualifications at the beginning of this, but we latched onto him because he's a grade 1 winner. He was a brilliant grade 1 winner. It's not like he sort of lucked into a grade 1 win. He was an absolutely top class racehorse. He's by one of the top 5 or 10 stallions in the country right now. And that stallion happens to be a rising sire of sires. He's got a very nice bottom line. People are going to be familiar with him in the Mid-Atlantic because he was based in New Jersey and he ran locally. His big win was in New York, but he stakes winner at Monmouth, a grade 3 winner at Penn, ran at Laurel a couple of times. I went up and saw him. He's gorgeous in person. I'm very excited for our first stallion show, which we don't have scheduled yet, although he will be participating. They're going to do a stallion showcase at Laurel the Saturday after Thanksgiving, where they're going to invite the local stallions to ship down to the track and be paraded on the track and in the winner's circle one at a time, and sort of show off to breeders that way. But I can't wait for people to see him in the flesh because he's just as impressive as he looks in that photo. And that's what I thought about when I saw him.
So George, I'm gonna interject here because I'm gonna add some levity and fun color here. I was in Saratoga and at the time, actually in Albany, and George called me, and it had to be 6 a.m. and he said, "Hey, I am on my way to New Jersey." And George was fairly breathless with excitement that we had a chance to go get this stallion and retire this stallion, the horse and turn him into a stallion. It was like I will tell you, it was like a kid getting up on Christmas morning for George. And so I'm trying to give you the excitement that George had. And we were able to pull this deal off in just a few days, really, to acquire the horse. We moved very quickly, and when we saw the opportunity, so George was pretty darn excited. I wish I would have recorded the call. Actually, he was so excited. So it's a good win for us, for sure. And we're very excited. So
yeah, it came together very quickly. And again, that excitement is because there's nothing about this horse that we have to make excuses for. He has everything that you could want in a stallion prospect. He has the race record, he has the pedigree, he has the sire line, he has the looks. Something that he's going to stand at Anchor and Hope. Lewis Merriman has mentioned to me repeatedly, something he thinks is very important for stallions in this region is durability. A lot of trainers, help the owners and breeders around here make their mating decisions, and those trainers want a horse that they can run for a long time. And this horse ran till he was 7, and ran at a high level until he was 7. I think, he's gonna really be just what people are looking for here.
Yep. Got a question. Charlie asked, how old is this picture? George took this picture maybe 3 weeks ago, George? Is that
3 weeks or a month ago?
Yeah, 3 weeks to a month. Yeah, so that's a fairly recent picture.
So he'd only raced a month before that, maybe.
Yeah. Yep. Vanessa asked a question: do you plan on acquiring more mares to breed to Force to Pass and offer through the Wasabi Ventures Stables broodmare program? The answer is yes. We currently have 3 up there now that are available. All 3 are targeted for Force to Pass next year. So feel free to go on there. I can tell you we have another one going up in 2 or 3 days. So there'll be 4 options that are available right now for you to choose mares that are targeting Force the Pass in 2020. So so we have 4 of those, and one way or the other, we're going to have 100 to 125 mares that go to Force the Pass. So yes, there are going to be some up there.
And just real quick, TK, the 4 mares that you're talking about that are up there have a lot of the things that we were talking about earlier that, you know, we're targeted specifically for Force the Pass. Seville's Princess is by Seville, who's a son of Galileo, which is that El Prado line. And Seville also happens to be out of a Silverhawk mare, which is Roberto. So Seville's Princess has, you know, is going to have those lines of El Prado and Roberto that we were targeting. She also happens to have Pleasant Colony on our bottom side. He's had very good results with Speightstown. Ride the Tide is by Stormy Atlantic, which that's a very strong nick. She's out of a Learfan mare. Learfan is a son of Roberto. And Ride the Tide's Dam also happens to be a half to a stakes winner by Lion Cavern, who's a full brother to Gone West, who's the grandsire of Force the Pass. So there's a lot to like about her there. Exchanging Embers out of a stakes winning Exchange Rate mare. Exchange Rate's a son of Danzig, which is one of the sire lines we're targeting for brood mares. And Exchange Rate's out of a Seeking the Gold Dam. Seeking the Gold is an A+ or A++ nick with Speightstown, because he's got a grade 1 winner, a grade 3 winner, and another stakes winner from only like 30 foals bred on that cross. And the 4th mare, Shall Try, is out of is by Orientate, which is Mount Livermore Blushing Groom, which again has had very good results with Speightstown. So these are all mares that make a lot of sense for Force the Pass, and we think are, you know, going to produce foals that will work as racehorses because of the pedigree crosses.
Perfect. Yeah, and so just to tie a bow on that, there'll definitely be a few more mares, but I will tell you that most of the mares that we plan on owning at this point, we own. There may be a couple more, but they're going to be highly selective. We're looking for very specific things in the ones that we add. But we think we have a really good broodmare group already to send to him internally, and so it's all about adding and testing some of those crosses that George had mentioned. Any other questions from the group? Oh, got a question. Mark asked a question. You said Force the Pass will be between 100 and 125 mares for this first year. Yeah, that's our target. He asked the question of how long will a stallion mate? How many years? Since he's kind of 7 now. George, I'll let you sort of jump in and give a quick answer to that. As far as longevity of a stallion.
Sure. I mean, there's no reason to think he won't breed until he's 20 or older than 20. I mean, there's stallions out there now that, you know, I mean, they breed till they're 25 would be on the high side, but it's not like he's only going to have 5 years. I mean, their breeding lives are plenty long. I mean, he should have a dozen years or so as a stallion at least, and it would not be unexpected if it's, you know, more than that. Yeah, it depends on the horse, but there's no reason to think that he won't live that long.
Yep. Let's see. Next question we got. We got a thanks. So we answered that one correctly. So that's good. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Well, I'll just summarize everyone for here tonight. So thanks for coming out. You can read about Force the Pass. You can find and ask questions at forcethepass.com. There's plenty of links. There's a couple links on there. You can actually click through and ask questions. And we're more than happy to answer any of those that come through. So thanks everybody, and have a great night. And thanks, George, for your time tonight.
Thank you.